you been interviewed by the special counsel?
I have.
You have? And what sort of questions were they asking you?
That's the extent I can go in discussing that as well.
Did Donald Trump know about those emails before they came out?
Absolutely.
He knew about them?
Yes.
He knew what was coming out before WikiLeaks released them? You're saying Donald Trump had a back channel?
I didn't say that, you did, but I will say that I am going to expose the corruption that went on in the campaign and in the White House. I'm going to continue to blow the whistle on all of this.
Well, Omarosa making the rounds, pitching a new book, and getting a lot of attention for what she's saying. The president taking note as well, as we noted, when you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break. He tweeted this morning, and give her a job at the White House. I guess it just didn't work out. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog. Well, that tweet got a lot of attention all over the place.
And how does Sarah Huckabee Sanders take to the White House podium and defend this man? How does Kellyanne Conway stay silent today and not go out and at least break with the president in his calling a woman a dog? How do the senior women in the cabinet, how do the women that get a paycheck from the American taxpayers stay silent on a day like today?
People are trying to get away with saying that Donald Trump is terrible to women who work for him and that he's a sexist, misogynist. Why would I be standing here in front of the White House working in this building if I didn't think this man was doing great for all Americans? And by the way, if I felt that he wasn't respectful toward women, he's an excellent boss to women.
She went on to say she wouldn't have obviously used those particular words. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hilton is a former advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron and host of The Next Revolution here on Fox News Channel. Karen Tumulty, opinion writer for The Washington Post, and Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com. You know, Karen, a lot of people say, you know, you're giving this too much oxygen, but it is the oxygen that the president is providing that is driving a lot of the coverage, is it not?
Absolutely. I think anybody who has watched any of Omarosa's interviews, including her disastrous one yesterday with Savannah Guthrie, doesn't walk away from those interviews thinking, oh, I've got to go out and read this book. It really is the president, with his tweets, with his engagement, who I think is putting a lot of fuel on this fire.
Guy, what do you think of all this?
Oh my gosh, well, when the White House is out there and their primary defense is the president calls many different people dogs, it's maybe not the best situation for the country. It does happen to be true, at least on some level. There was a reporter from Business Insider who went through and compiled on Twitter a list of people the president has referred to as dogs, which included many white men like Mitt Romney and Rahm Emanuel and David Gregory and Eric Erickson. The list goes on and on. But here we are. The president, I think, has a compulsion to fight back. It's part of the reason that a lot of his supporters love him. But you have to question occasionally the wisdom of the ferocity of the pushback, given the context here where he's very clearly punching down in a big way against someone who I think has limited credibility, to put it kindly.
Steve.
Yeah, I agree with Karen and Guy. I'd add a couple of things. I think you said that she's getting a lot of attention, Brett. That's exactly right. She's getting the attention, but I don't think she's going to have any impact. I think this will turn out to be pretty inconsequential in terms of the overall scheme of things. There's just one thing I'd like to pick up on, because a lot of people in discussing this have made the point, well, why did the president hire this person in the first place? It's a mistake to bring people like this into government. You shouldn't have people like that with no government experience. I think that is the wrong lesson to learn. I think it's often very useful to have outsiders, people without government experience and so on, brought into government to shake things up. You don't just want a bunch of bland bureaucrats. However, they have to have some level of integrity, and Omarosa clearly doesn't.
Karen, what about this Peter Strzok story? As the president continues to tweet about that, Peter Strzok fired, a lot of back and forth about how that is all played out and how really he led the way in these investigations, the Trump probe as well. But the president saying if I had a real attorney general, this would not be going forward.
Yeah, this is, again, he cannot get over the fact that Jeff Sessions recused himself from all of this at the outset of the administration. And he continues to sort of dig and dig and dig at his own attorney general. Of course, if he didn't want Jeff Sessions there's a way to get rid of him. He's the president. And I think it also goes to, the question of why people don't feel loyal to Donald Trump in many respects, you know, loyalty starts at the top. And so we have seen, you know, people, once they are out of his orbit, they turn on him. And this is something you often see in Washington.
You know, Guy, the outrage meter is always at 11 here in Washington. I mean, it really seems like every day is another thing that, you know, heads explode about. Whether they should or shouldn't, we'll leave to the viewers at home. But, Guy, what do you think of the political impact here, potentially, as we head towards midterms on both of these stories?
Well, I tend to agree with Steve that on Omarosa, this is a passing fascination. She's wall-to-wall on another network right now talking to anyone who will listen about all of these allegations. The one that we played at the beginning of the clip, if true, would be huge, that the president or the then-candidate Trump had advanced knowledge of WikiLeaks, possession of DNC emails, but there's not a shred of evidence to that effect thus far. And another network, in fact, got in some trouble for making that claim and had to walk it back a number of months ago, if I recall correctly. So Omarosa, I think, probably a passing phase in our national discussion. The Peter Strzok Russia broader issue, I think, is here to stay until Mueller wraps things up, because of it's an all-encompassing topic. Both parties have dug in their heels on this issue at this point. And the one thing I will say in the moment, Brett, is that I'm fascinated by the sort of cultural martyrdom that has surrounded Peter Strzok, and he's sort of being portrayed as a victim of President Trump. That is very odd to me, given the black and white text messages, the evidence that we've seen for which he was fired.
And all that the IG said about him, now a GoFundMe page. You never know what this country's going to do next.